Hey there, buckaroos, and welcome back to Tabletop Ferox. So, you may recall that last year I reviewed the Tingleverse, the official Chuck Tingle role-playing game, and overall, really liked it. And since then, I've actually been fortunate enough to have been gifted the entire set of Tingleverse books. You may have seen them sitting in the background of my videos. So I figured that since it's June, why not take the opportunity to continue proving love and look at some of those other Tingleverse books. And I figure the best place to start is with the Living Objects Handbook. And if you watched my original review of the Tingleverse, you may recall that it not including living objects was one of my biggest complaints about the game, because that is my favorite type of Tingler. Like, I just happen to find things like bisexual movie theaters, roller coaster baristas, zombie elevator lawyers, and polyhedral role-playing dice orgies to be very interesting ideas to explore. Don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against big feet or dinosaurs, just, that's my personal preference. So, I was, of course, quite disappointed that the core rules, while mentioning living objects, didn't actually include any rules for incorporating them into the game, and also am obviously very excited to check out the Living Objects Handbook, which does that specific thing I just said. So, let's do the thing I just said, which is checking out the Living Objects Handbook. And here it is, the Tingleverse Living Objects Handbook, as well as some of the exciting living objects we will find within. So, let's to within the book. So, like the regular core Tingleverse book, it's very plain for the most part. But what is in here is some very interesting stuff. Like, he goes into quite a bit of information on a lot of the basic concepts of living objects and how to incorporate them both into the narrative and the game. This isn't just like, oh, here are some character types. We are thinking about living objects as characters and how they interact with the world. And a really good example is right here when discussing how it is that living objects can perform actions that humans or Bigfoots or unicorns can do, despite seeming to not have the necessary anatomy to do so. The most commonly seen version of this is the fact that most living objects do not appear to possess arms or hands. Within the Tingleverse, it is up to the living object whether or not they would like to have hands or arms at any given moment. This can serve as a great advantage for living objects, particularly if they would like to disguise themselves as non-living item. Keep in mind, however, they will still have a large face that would likely give their true nature away, and typically be 10 times the size of their non-living counterparts. So, living objects are generally the size of a human, or raptor, or Bigfoot, unicorn. And as for the hands thing specifically mentioned here, if you've never read any of Chuck Tingle's Tinglers, that is basically how it works. Living objects are there and are just addressed as if they are a regular creature. Whether or not they have arms or hands at any given moment is entirely up to what they need to do in that current scene. Which personally is a thing that I consider to be a huge part of absurdist literature in general. Everything makes sense unless you say that it doesn't. So you can specify that your living bicycle character carries their timeline bag over their handlebars, but when they need to open that bag and pull out their sword and fight some goons, you don't need to say, I have arms now, so I'm doing this. You just do the thing, because that's what the character does in that moment. And for the most part, that is how living objects are handled. They are a giant floating die or a bicycle or whatnot, but they still function more or less like a human, with a few notable exceptions, specifically being age, in that they do not age, so are immune to the effects of aging, including magical aging. They have faces and mouths, so they're still vulnerable to poisons and they need to breathe and all that stuff, but magical aging is a thing that is specified that they are immune to. Also, the way that items relate to living objects is a little different, not in like a weird meta way, just in the way that if you are delving into a, bus stop dungeon and you open a treasure chest and you find some magic armor, chances are that magic armor is going to be shaped and sized for a humanoid body, not a living remote or a D20 or a bicycle. Now, of course, most of the magic items can reasonably be reworked, rethemed, and refitted to work for living objects, but the game does specifically state that things like magic armor and magic boots and whatnot are not usually going to work for them right out of the box. And that is about it for the introduction section, and I think it is very well done because it gives you enough information on living objects to answer the questions that someone might ask you without getting too bogged down in unnecessary minutiae. Like, basically, it covers a lot of the what and a little bit of the how, but none of the why. And as I said earlier, the why isn't necessary. Why a bicycle is alive is not a thing in the Tingleverse that really needs to be discussed. Why one car is sentient and another isn't doesn't matter, just that you need to treat the sentient car like a sentient being and the non-sentient car like a car. And I just really like the way that he handles this, in that he really addresses living objects just as you would any other fantasy race in your fantasy world. Even going so far as to think of interesting cultural things like that a junkyard is the living object cultural equivalent of a graveyard. Like, just all kinds of little bits of information that can provide a lot of interesting opportunities for both players and Tingle Masters. But now you probably want to know about what types of living objects you can play as in the Tingleverse with the Living Objects Handbook, because that's what you mainly get in the Living Objects Handbook. So on to playable living object types. So we have a gingerbread them, and every single living object type has ability score adjustments, some recommended typical trots, a description, an image. You may recall that another one of my complaints about the core book was a lack of art, information on society and lifestyle, special abilities, notable disadvantages, specific unique ways. A unique way is kinda like a feat, but not exactly, because they generally have a positive and negative benefit, and a few unique magic items just for that type. So they are very, very thoroughly covered, like considerably more thoroughly covered than the core book was. Yeah, I realized that I literally have the core book, so I should pull it up to show you. Alright, so comparatively, here are types in the core book. Big feet, humans, raptors, unicorns. The whole thing on 3 pages. As opposed to the Living Objects Handbook, where every single type is several pages. So, moving on, we have Haunted Portrait, Living Bicycle, and once again, just want to point out how much I like having these very Tingle-esque photo bash illustrations here in the book. As I keep saying, I was very disappointed to not have them in the core book So I love having them here because that is one of those, like one of the first things that you think of when you hear Chuck Tingle. And Living Donut. I don't really like the living food ones myself. Living Guitar. Living Monetary Unit, Pound, Quarter, or Bitcoin, etc. Living Television, and if you do not think that is sexy, you are wrong. Magic Carpet, and once again, just to reiterate, every single one of these is several pages long. Mysterious S symbol. These are things that are normal in the Tingleverse. The physical manifestation of a nice afternoon. That would be the physical manifestation of a nice afternoon. Notably, there aren't that many physical manifestations. There is the physical manifestation of the action film genre, which is, I guess, just kind of a dude. And my personal favorite physical manifestation, the physical manifestation of this game. And, this living object is not a sentient manifestation of role-playing games in general, nor even a manifestation of the Tingleverse, the official Chuck Tingle role-playing game in its entirety. Instead, this living object is an embodiment of the specific Tingleverse game you are currently playing. Yeah, so you can play as the physical manifestation of the exact actual game of the Tingleverse that you are currently playing. Why are you still playing D&D when this exists? And I will actually go over one of these in its entirety. There's just a specific one I want to go over. So Sentient Coffin, and I will go over that one when I get to it. And you can probably guess what it is. So Sentient Detergent Pod, that was a thing. That was a trend a little while ago. Zoomers were eating those. Sentient Die, odd choice with the D12, but you know, man named Chuck's a little odd. Sentient Remote Control. Sentient Tree. And the one that I will be going into, Tingler. Yes, you can play as a Tingler, which you probably already guessed by the fact that a sentient copy of Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt is on the cover. So, Tinglers get +2 to Street Smarts and -2 to Fortitude, have any trot typically, and Tinglers are sentient species of book, specifically a book written by the world's greatest author, Chuck Tingle. While Chuck Tingle has authored many tomes, including this one, the title of Tingler only applies to one of Chuck's short stories. Typically, these tales are between 3,000 and 6,000 words and are almost entirely based in the erotica genre. An important technicality to note is that Tinglers in the timeline of the Tingleverse game are living objects and not physical manifestations. Within the Tingleverse game, these paperback books are printed and brought into sentience in a real way as physical items. In the layer of reality where you, the reader, are located, Tinglers do not actually exist as paperbacks, only ebooks. Collections and long-form novels of Chuck Tingle stories are available in your timeline, just not the Tingler shorts. There is so much thought put into this, and the specific fact that within the universe of the game, Tinglers exist in paperbacks specifically is a detail that I absolutely love, that he just felt the need to specify. That's the thing. He didn't need to specify that. He could have just said, this is a sentient Tingler, they are a book. But no, he specified that this is a timeline where they are regularly printed instead of just being ebooks. I'm a fan, you might have guessed at this point. Tinglers maneuver about their world through floating, using the standard hovering rules that apply to many living objects. Oh yeah, I didn't really cover the standard hovering rules. So basically, any living object that doesn't really have a form of locomotion, you know, like a bicycle, just kind of floats a few feet in the air. They can't like fly or anything. They can only go about as high so that they're face height with a person so that you can talk to them. And they also exert pressure upon the ground so they're not like able to move undetected. It is, as I said earlier, a thing that is very much, here is the answer to the question on the off chance that someone asks, but really, if you're in the right headspace to play this game, you shouldn't bother asking. They are rectangular and very thin thanks to their slim page count, measuring about 4.5 feet tall and 3 feet across. On the front of every Tingler is a human-like face that protrudes halfway out of the book's surface. Through this face, the Tingler speaks, sees, and smells. Once again, didn't need to be that specific, but he did, because Chuck Tingle cares. Due to the fact that there are hundreds of Tinglers available to choose from, these living objects come in a wide variety of appearances and personalities, with more arriving every day. When creating your Tingler character, you are allowed to pick from any real Tingler that Chuck Tingle has published. This will be your character for the duration of the game, so choose wisely. When referring to your character type, use the following method. Tingler name of ... Example, Tingler name of Space Raptor Butt Invasion. The specific Tingler you select for your character will determine their cover art, which can vary wildly, just like the dispositions of these sentient objects. Society and lifestyle. Due to their direct connection to Dr. Chuck Tingle himself, Tinglers are revered as powerful and mighty spiritual beings in the Tingleverse game. Whether or not this reverence is warranted, however, is another story entirely. It is true that Tinglers do possess a deeper connection to the vibrations of the Tingleverse than nearly any other living object, but what they do with this connection is up to the Tingler themselves. In practice, these sentient books vary wildly in personality, each and every title featuring a different outlook on their place in reality. While the story of their existence may seem exciting from the outside looking in, being crafted by the hands that built the very Tingleverse itself, they still only gain sentience by means of a simple printer with some ink and a little binding glue. Tinglers seem particularly rare and wise to those who interact with them, but in truth there are multiple copies of each and every book in broad circulation. In other words, everything about the Tingler can present itself in a variety of ways, some of them directly contradicting one another. The only thing that seems to bring every Tingler together is the fact that they all live under the weight of hefty expectations. It is up to the Tinglers themselves whether or not they can meet these expectations, or if they even want to. And once again, reminder, this is how thoroughly every single one of the living object types is written up. But that was just the descriptive text. Now on to the actual mechanical rules. Special abilities. Tinglers have an inherent wisdom, not only due to their innate metaphysical connection to Chuck Tingle himself, but also thanks to their deep knowledge of the source material. When navigating through the Tingleverse, it helps to have a relevant story printed directly onto your body. All Tinglers know their own tale by heart and can recite it at will. It's this method of reciting sacred words, in fact, that provides Tinglers with one of their most powerful abilities. Tinglers begin the game with one use of the moving selection ability per day, then are granted an additional use every third level. Levels 3, 6, 9, nice, 12, etc. With this ability, the living object will loudly recite a selection of their own story, imbuing all friendly characters within 20 yards a deeper and more profound connection to the vibrations of the Tingleverse. And you might be thinking, wow, that sounds pretty cool, but I mean, it's not like it's going to get way, way better and be one of the most awesome things in this entire book. And yeah, it is. For this ability to work, the player themselves must confidently recite a real selection from the Tingler of their character. If the TM does not find this reading to be sufficiently enthusiastic, then the ability fails, although the TM is encouraged to allow second chances if need be. So if I were playing as a living Tingler named Friday the 69th, and I wanted to use the moving selection, I could read out, "The two of us stand in silence for a moment, the erotic tension continuing to build. I feel like you want to ask me something," the dinosaur finally continues from behind her mask. "I just can't believe that you can make women I finally offer." Jessie hesitates for a moment, and although I can't see her face behind the mask, I detect a distinct smirk. "I can show you if you'd like. It is Friday the 69th after all." And yes, you do of course have to read it that erotically. It is in the rules. All friendly characters hearing this receive several bonuses that last for 4 rounds for every level of the character. It is typically recited directly before a battle or situation where multiple ability checks will be required. The temporary moving selection bonuses are as follows: -1 to AS and RS for every 3 levels of the Tingler with a maximum of -4, +1 to DS for every 3 levels of the Tingler with a maximum of +6, -1 to all ability score check rolls for every 5 levels of the Tingler with a maximum of -5. And if those numbers don't make sense to you, you should watch my review of the Tingleverse because I explain what all those numbers mean, and if I explain them now, I wouldn't be able to trick you into watching my review of the Tingleverse. This was all a trick. This was all a trick to get you to watch that other video. And the innate wisdom of Tinglers also provides them with an immediate and permanent +2 to their Street Smarts ability score. So, this ability is a thing that I really, really, really like because, well, I'm actually going to go off on a bit of a thing here. You see, the memeable popularity of Chuck Tingle is one that really likes to just kind of gloss over the erotica author part of his identity as an artist, or rather the reality of the erotica author part. Like, a lot of people treat him more like an internet personality first, and bring an attitude of, "Oh, tee-hee, he writes books about being pounded in the butt by this, that, and the other thing, isn't that silly?" I mean, not that I would ever read one, of course, I'm not one of those people. Regarding the core of his creative output and the thing that he started doing as nothing more than a novelty, a bit, something to be cheekily referenced but never genuinely interacted with or celebrated. Like, yeah, I am glad that more people are becoming fans of Man Named Chuck. He is a great person. But doing so while at best only ironically embracing the fact that he writes hardcore dinosaur erotica is kinda contrary to the genuineness that is a hallmark of Chuck Tingle's work and love-proving attitude. So I absolutely love including a rule that requires you to not just read, but engage with at least one Tingler. As I said, because they are the very foundation of the Tingleverse. And you know what? Honestly, read a Tingler. Even if you are not playing as a living Tingler, just read one. They're like $3 on the internet, or like $8 for a collection that's got a bunch of stories in it. Maybe you'll like them, maybe you won't, but you know what? You won't know that for sure until you check them out. You know, me and my YouTube channel, reviewing role-playing games and trying to convince people to read dinosaur porn. Alright, then, in addition to all of this, and all of this is quite a lot, Tinglers command the good part special ability, referencing a point within their own unique story where things really start to get good. As with all books, there are ebbs and flows to the prose of a Tingler. This also holds true for the actual lives of these living objects. Their connection to the Tingleverse vibrations allows them to connect these two facts in a powerful meta way. At the start of the game, a Tingler character must roll a d8. This number directly correlates to a cool move level, cool moves are kinda like spells, they're kinda not like spells. Once again, if you want to know the rules of the Tingleverse, I made a video where I explain the rules of the Tingleverse. And metaphorically represents the good part of their story. When a Tingler gains the ability to use cool moves of this particular level, they gain an additional 2 cool move selections and 2 cool move uses per day of this specific level. In other words, if a bad boy Tingler who rolls a 4 for their good part reaches experience level 7, they would normally be granted access to 1 level 4 cool move. However, because their good part roll was 4, they receive 3 cool moves upon reaching this level, and then will continue to gain more moves normally. It is important to write down your good part number on your character sheet so you do not forget it. Also, when determining this number, the D8 can be re-rolled once if the player so desires, but the second roll must be used. And that one is very good, because honestly, if you roll 7 or 8 and you are not expecting to get to that high of a level, you can re-roll it, because let's be honest here, you have expectations when you start playing a game of how long it's going to go. And sometimes things are like, oh, you get all your really great abilities around level 15, and it's like, wow, I don't expect to get higher than level like 6 or 7 in this entire campaign. I'm talking about D&D. D&D is bad. Once again, you should be playing the Tingleverse. And then we have some notable disadvantages. Tinglers are printed on regular paper, which gives them an enormous disadvantage when facing both fire-based and water-based weapons. Yep, everything changed when the Water Nation attacked. These living objects always take an additional 50% damage from fire or water-based attacks. Example, a Tingler struck by a flaming sword that would normally deal 20 health points of damage deals 30. Fortunately, the vibrations of the Tingleverse protect Tinglers from normal water contact, such as heavy rain or swimming, and they are not harmed. Which is good because, perhaps my living copy of Friday the 69th might like to go and do some lake activities. The paper that makes up a Tingler's body is also detrimental to their general fortitude, causing them to take a permanent -2 penalty to their fortitude ability score. And just like the +2 to street smarts, that is, covered here at the beginning. And then unique ways, Tingler only. No bicycles can take these, only Tinglers. Bestseller. Best-selling Tinglers are highly regarded and well-liked by many readers. They are much more recognizable than their cult classic peers. So, for example, Space Raptor Butt Invasion versus double featured by the sentient bisexual movie theaters. A reality that can have its advantages and its disadvantages. One notable advantage is the boost it gives to social interactions, providing a +2 bonus to the charm ability score of Tinglers with this unique way. So, if you did want to play as a Tingler bard, because remember, this is basically BIC Performance. Yeah, just for you 5th edition players, way back in 3rd edition, which us old people played, BIC Performance actually just lasted for a number of rounds and gave the bonuses to all of your allies for the entire duration instead of just one roll. I must take every opportunity to take shots at how terribly 5th edition massacred the bard. Unfortunately, I am going off on a lot of tangents in this particular review. It is honestly pretty much Sean Brand. Unfortunately, being a bestseller can also come with a lot of pressure to be successful, in addition to the already intense pressure that most Tinglers already face. Because of this, Tinglers with this unique way are slightly more likely to fumble intricate tasks that are taken under pressure. This manifests itself as a permanent -1 to the Tingler's dexterity ability score. So as I said, they're kind of like feats, but they have a bonus and a penalty to them, which makes them cool and unique. That's why they're unique ways. And signed copy. This Tingler bears a signature of the author himself, Dr. Chuck Tingle. The name is written in either silver or black pen across the front cover or inside the first page. Those who select the signed copy unique way have an especially deep connection to Tingleverse vibrations, although it will likely take them quite a bit of life experience to fully understand the personal and meta implications of this association. All this meta stuff is actually very normal for the game. Once again, watch my whole review. I can't explain the Tingleverse and review this specific Tingleverse book at the same time. There is too much tingliness to cover all at once. When the good part of this character's journey arrives, based on the good part Tingler ability, they will receive 3 additional cool moves at this particular level instead of just 2. The character can also reroll their good part level selection at the beginning of the game 3 times instead of just 2. Unfortunately, signed copies are much less likely to put themselves in harm's way and suffer the consequences of their lack of training. Characters with this unique way take a -1 penalty to both their dexterity and strength ability scores. And large print. Tinglers with the large print unique way have a much easier time reciting themselves, rendering their moving selection ability slightly more effective. While this ability normally allows a Tingler character a +1 to their DS for every 3 levels of the Tingler with a maximum +6 bonus after reciting their moving selection, those with the large print unique way gain +1 to their DS for every 2 levels of the Tingler with a maximum of +6 after reciting their moving selection. Unfortunately, the large print is much less sought after than the regular edition, and while this does make it rarer, it drops the character's charm ability score by -1. And magic items! Tingler specific. Once again, no bicycles. Bookmark of Returning. This powerful bookmark is held within the pages of a Tingler, radiating a slight magical aura until its use. The front and back of the Bookmark of Returning depicts a picture of a train in the night, smoke rising up behind it in a massive plume. Some Tinglers who are lucky enough to find one of these bookmarks will keep it within their pages for an entire lifetime, never needing to call on its powers. Others find use for it quite quickly. When needed, the Tingler can spend this magical bookmark to call back any character who is waiting at the station of the Lonesome Train. That is basically, like, dead, but the point at being dead where you can still be brought back from being dead. Once you board the Lonesome Train, you're gone. The Tingler does not have to go to the Lonesome Train station themselves, they simply call on the magic of their bookmark to make the selected character return to the spot from which they left on. Upon use, the Bookmark of Returning will dissolve into dust and blow away. Those who are brought back from the station of the Lonesome Train with the Bookmark of Returning still suffer the same penalties as other characters who are rescued from the station through regular means. Then, a Bookmark of Voidal Defense. This bookmark is brilliant white with raised ivory design spiraling and twisting across its flat surface. It shimmers slightly under the light, sparkling with an internal vibrancy. Any Tingler with this bookmark held between its pages is granted -2 to their saves versus Void. You might have guessed by now, minus is good on saves and attacks. Once again, not going to explain all the rules right now. They also receive +2 to their DS from Void-based attacks. Bookmark of the Charming Trot. This bookmark is light purple in color, with several patterns of geometrical white and pink designs cascading across its flat surface. Any Tingler who holds this bookmark between their pages is granted a +1 to their charm ability score. Okay, yeah, these two aren't great, but I love the Bookmark of Returning because it is so thematically awesome. Because it is a bookmark that brings someone back from the dead. Because you're going, oh, let's just go take the bookmark and go back to the previous section that we have marked where they are not dead. And I like that. I wish there were some more interesting magic items, but like what can a book really have other than bookmarks? And here's the thing, if this was all that was in the book, that'd be great. Look how much book we have there. And that's just lots of content, lots of good content. But no, that wasn't enough for Dr. Chuck Tingle. He also has monstrous living objects, so we've got monsters, and every, one of these types of games, you can never have enough monsters. So let's look at those. And just like the core book, we have these incredibly charming illustrations. I would rather see this than shitty AI slop any day. This has character, and it looks like a human being drew it because they wanted to, not because they didn't want to. So, we have all sorts of great monsters here, like the Attack Tack, the Bowling Beast. Once again, several pages for every monster. A Chocula, a Chomp Chair, Crandall, Crane Saw. There's a lot of puns in this one. Doomsday, which is the physical manifestation of a specific day. Like it is noted here that it is a specific day, like one date in history given a manifested form. Flash Blight. Puns. I love the puns. Hammerhead Shark. King Dread, aka Deathbed, the bed that eats. Always here for Deathbed, the bed that eats. Living Tank. Monster Truck, which is an interesting one. Monster trucks are living objects from an automobile-based timeline where all life on Earth is based entirely on sentient vehicles. Over time, the cars have evolved and transformed in a variety of ways, taking on new roles and finding themselves in a wide degree of sentient awareness. This just, makes sense in this game, and that is why I love this game. Peach Fuzz, physical manifestation of seasickness. Shrollian, let's say. Slayer Cake. Like it's not just puns, it is quality puns. And Slimer. And my favorite in this book, Snowmame. Mind you, I enjoy the, Deathbed, the bed that eats. But something about this guy. He's a little guy. He's a little guy and I like him. Terror Tire. They did a whole movie about that. Tooth Crush. Love the puns. And Vendor. This one's really also really high on my list because it's just a vending machine. It's just an evil vending machine. Vanadeath. And that is it. Chuck Tingle is a Hugo-nominated erotic author and Taekwondo grandmaster, almost black belt, from Billings, Montana. After receiving his PhD at DeVry University in holistic massage, Chuck Tingle found himself fascinated by all things sensual, leading to his creation of the Tingler, a story so blissfully erotic that it cannot be experienced without eliciting a sharp tingle down the spine. Chuck's hobbies include backpacking, checkers, and sport. And that's it. That is the Tingleverse Living Objects Handbook. A lovely book that I quite enjoy. And yeah, admittedly I am a bit biased here, but I love the idea of having a whole book of living objects. As I've said several times, I was disappointed that they weren't included in the core book, so getting an entire book of them is really cool. And it is incredibly well done. A lesser man, one who didn't really care about the quality of what he was doing, could have just written up some stats for a few objects and called it a day. But Chuck Tingle is not a lesser man, and he detailed each of the living object types incredibly thoroughly, significantly more thoroughly than the core types are in the core book. And then just in general, he put a lot of thought into explaining how living objects function, not just in the game, but in the world of the Tingleverse. Which, you know, can be a little hard to grasp. Like, he discusses that, and yeah, a lot of time you're not thinking about the fact that if you are on the bus, you might be able to have a conversation with the bus. The bus that you are riding on can be a pivotal NPC in your Tingleverse adventure. And then also the monstrous living objects. Like, he could have just given us the player option living objects and called it a day. That would have been fine. I would overall be just as excited about this book, but then he went in and added all of those monsters. So he's just constantly going the extra mile because that is what Chuck Tingle does. And it looks, okay, not great, but it looks like what you would expect a book to look like for the Chuck Tingle role-playing game. You have the lovely photoshopped images that Chuck Tingle's work is so well known for, and then also those charming illustrations in the monster section. So, overall, honestly, I feel like if this was more well laid out, if this had more professional layout quality to it, it just wouldn't feel Chuck Tingle, you know? I hope that makes sense. If you are a buckaroo, that probably makes sense. If you are not a buckaroo, join the buckaroos. So overall, if you find yourself wanting to have some Tingleverse adventures, I would say that the Living Object Handbook is as essential as any supplement can be. It adds a very, very important element to the Tingleverse role-playing game from the, Tingleverse, and does so incredibly well. If you want to play as a sentient coffin bad boy or fight a crane saw, this book has you covered, and I can't imagine you wouldn't want to do those things. And thank you for watching. If you enjoy the wacky things I say and do, you can follow me on Blue Sky and/or Tumblr. You can also join me live on Twitch, where sometimes things get a little weird. And extra special thanks to my Fightin' Flail Snails, Broken Unicorn, D-Stex, Hasterfan, Nikolai Snowtail, Puggo, Randy Mulholland, Renee D, Stephen Kramer, Tila Glar, Toshiro Kuro, and Tyro the Fox. If you want to be cool like them, check out my Patreon or YouTube channel memberships, two different things that provide similar but distinct benefits. But if you don't want to do that, that's cool too. You can still hit all the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, these other videos that have mysteriously manifested from the ethers, which I am sure are lovely videos that you will also enjoy. And I will see you next time.